Hey, welcome everyone. Thank you for joining in for another great session of India Salesforce Days. This is our, I would say, seventh session as part of this program, as part of the platform technical series. Today we'll be talking about the highlights from the TrailblazerDX this year, which has happened in the month of April or June. May. I'm missing the dates. There are, but yeah, it happened in the June, and definitely Aditya and Satya would be giving a lot of insights. What all happened there? They were there in person, was doing a lot of campaigning and programs with all the developers, with all the partners. So I'm looking forward to hear myself as well. Without taking much time, let me actually invite Aditya to introduce himself.
Hi, everyone. Good morning. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Aditya. So I am a lead developer advocate with Salesforce. Mine and Satya, both of us are in the same role. So our primary job responsibility is to make sure you are successful on the Salesforce platform, which means anything new on the platform, any best practices, we are there to let you know about those. And you'll actually frequently find us on Twitter, on YouTube, and on the Salesforce Developers blog. So if you haven't already seen any of our videos, blog posts, I encourage you to go and check them out. It's not just both of us, but we have a huge team and all of us are pretty much doing the same thing. So in case you're stuck somewhere, just go on to either the blog posts or the YouTube channel and you'll find everything that we do.
Fantastic. Over to you, Satya.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. Thank you, Durgesh. Thank you, Aditya. And Aditya has introduced me as well. Half of me is already introduced. So I'm colleague of Aditya. I'm also a lead developer advocate at Salesforce. And as part of my job, I motivate developers to build applications on the Salesforce platform. As Aditya rightly said, we source our content through different channels, maybe YouTube, Salesforce developer website, and most of the places you can find us somewhere writing some content. And for anything else, you can always reach us on our Twitter handle. With that said, I'll give it back to Aditya.
Fantastic. I will just quickly give some points about myself. Like, hi everyone. If you're seeing me after a long time, part of Salesforce ecosystem for more than 10 years. My role especially here is to help our partners to get enabled on platform, Experience Cloud, and Slack, all these three. I especially focus on Slack. And you can always reach out to me as a partner to discuss on any of your challenges around platform, and I'm happy to help. With this, always feel free to connect with all of us on LinkedIn or on Twitter, like Aditya mentioned. And yeah, do shout out about this particular program which you are participating in. I will be sharing more insights. But let's move to the next slide firstly, and quickly spoke about few of the logistics things. So again, in Zoom, there are two ways to connect. There is a chat option, there is a Q&A, and there is a raise hand as well. But please only use the Q&A because we have like more than 600 members already on the call and many more are still joining in. So it might be very challenging for us to, answer your questions on chat or, giving you an option to raise your hand and then asking your question. So we'll use the Q&A only to answer your questions mostly. And as well as, even in case we'll not be able to answer, I will be able to export the report and then I will find some way to share all the answers with you over a quip itself. Okay, I will enable the transcript so that in case you want to have it, you can use it or you can hide it as well by the option of hiding subtitles. The presentation will be shared. You don't need to take any screenshots. Even the recording will also be available within the next 24 hours on our same landing page, or actually there is a hub page as well, which we have created on Vidyard. You can go to either of the place and you'll find all the recordings there. All right, with this, let's move the next slide. As we're going to be talking about a lot of insights and details which is being shared in Trailblazer DX, definitely, there is a quick forward looking. As a partner, please only consider and recommend those products to your customers and their production logs, especially which are generally available, right? You already know the drill, but I'm just giving insights earlier because we might be speaking about some of the roadmap features which are either in pilot, beta, or maybe coming in the future release. Okay. The next slide, I will just quickly really want to thank you all. This wouldn't have been possible without all of you. This is the 7th edition of Salesforce Days, and we are actually looking forward. We all three and many of our team members would be coming in person into some of your campuses. and we are looking forward to have this in person once again this year. And a lot of excitement is there. A lot of exciting sessions would gonna be there happening. So please try to, join in person if you can. But again, anyone who is joining in virtually as well, equally thank to all of you. Like I said, this wouldn't have been possible without all of you as well. With this, we'll try our best to make your next 90 or 85 minutes valuable to learn everything about what we introduced in Trailblazer DX. Let me quickly launch this poll and let us know, where have you participated in Trailblazer DX in any form, be attending it in person, be watching it live on Trailblazer DX, on Salesforce Plus, watching recordings, or is this the first time you're hearing about it? I hope Satyanarayana, you're also able to see the poll responses.
Yeah.
Yes.
Great. All right, we'll give maybe around 25 more seconds. And I can see that a few of you actually attended it in person. That's good to see. Many of you have already watched the recording or watched it live, but then there are a good amount of participants who are completely new to this as well. So with this, let me keep the poll running for a few more minutes, few more seconds, Aditya, but you can start with the agenda.
Okay.
Mhm.
So interesting poll results, like Durgesh mentioned, 35 people have attended it in person. So hopefully this is going to be a refresher session for all of you, or in case you missed attending a few sessions, because there are a lot of sessions running in parallel. Hopefully this will give you some insight into what has happened at Trailblazer DX. Those who watched it live and gone through the recordings on Salesforce Plus. So I'm going to talk about what is available on Salesforce Plus and what is not. And for the people who are not able to participate and who don't know what Trailblazer DX is, that is exactly why we have the first bullet point on the agenda, which is what is Trailblazer DX. And once we cover that, we'll take about a minute to cover that. And then we are going to dive into the highlights of these 4 topics. So while there's a lot that's happening in Trailblazer DX, we felt as a developer audience, I think this is the most relevant content that we can present to you. So we are going to cover highlights about Apex, LWC, developer tools, and APIs. So after that, we'll go ahead with Q&A. So that means you need not wait until the end to ask your questions. So as in when we are talking about something, you can put your questions in the Q&A panel, and we will look at them in between sometime and then try to answer them. So with that, have we closed the poll?
Yes.
Not yet. Okay.
Yeah, just done it. Yeah.
All right. So amazing. All right. So we spoke about the poll results, more or less in line with what I just spoke about. So coming to what is Trailblazer DX. So we call it the developer event of the year. So have you heard about WWDC that Apple runs? So some of you might have, some of you might not, but it's kind of like that flagship developer event where we launch everything that is helpful for developers. So most of you would be knowing about Dreamforce, which is again happening in 2 months or so. So Dreamforce is more customer centric. There are technical sessions on there, but you'll find a lot of customers over there closing deals and stuff like that. But the other side of Dreamforce is Trailhead DX, which is more technical oriented. It's more for developers, admins, and it's been happening since about 5 years now. But now we have renamed Trailhead DX to Trailblazer DX. So in the end, it's the same. But the reason we renamed it is As you know, we have acquired a lot of companies over the past years, including MuleSoft, Tableau, Slack. And now we want this Trailhead DX to be a flagship conference for all of these technologies together and not just Salesforce. So what Trailblazer DX has is content about Salesforce, MuleSoft, Tableau, and Slack. So any developer coming in from any of these ecosystems can participate in Trailblazer DX. And it's a 2-day event. We have keynotes, we have sessions, we have demos. There's a lot going on. So if you would have missed Trailblazer DX, we recommend you watch it on Salesforce Plus, which is kind of our version of Netflix or Disney Plus Hotstar. So all the videos will be available on here, but the catch here is on Salesforce Plus for Trailblazer DX, all you have available are keynotes and what we call super sessions. So keynote is like this opening, kind of like a 1-hour long session about everything latest and greatest that Salesforce is going to launch. And it's always almost delivered either by Parker Harris, who's the CTO, or Brett Taylor or Sarah Franklin. So any of those CXO level people, they are the ones who deliver the keynote. And then come in what we call super sessions. Those are focused around different streams. So for example, for developers, there is a super session. For admins, there is a super session. For Slack, there is a super session. So that way, it's not a keynote, but it's kind of like a keynote where the topics that you're interested in, go and attend that particular super session where we are going to dive a little bit more deeper. So keynotes and super sessions are the only ones that are available on Salesforce Plus. When it comes to all the individual sessions that happen, so there are close to around 60, 70 sessions that happen. There can be 20-minute sessions, there can be 40-minute sessions. So all of those, unfortunately, are not available on Salesforce Plus. If they were available, we wouldn't have been here because you could have just watched the recordings. Because they are not available, we are here to talk to you about everything that has happened in those sessions. We are not going to talk about what has happened in the keynote or the super sessions because you can always go ahead and watch it on Salesforce Plus. Now, we are going to cover highlights from a few sessions like I've been blabbering since the past 5 minutes. But the catch here is, again, some of these you would have already heard about them because whatever we launch at TDX or Trailblazer DX, those are actually upcoming features. So those can be from your summer 22 release. So some of those that we have announced that Trailblazer DX are already available to you after the summer 22 release has been generally available for everyone. And some of them you have already would have heard from the previous sessions on Salesforce Days. So we are kind of like, I think on the day 7 or something, I don't know, Durgesh. Yeah. So in the previous 1 week, you would have attended a couple of sessions. And of course, it's the same topics in the end. As a developer, you'll be interested about Apex, LWC, and so on and so forth. So if you would have already attended an LWC session, there is a high chance that some of those topics you would have already heard about. But we try to curate a list, assuming some of you are new and assuming that some of these will be helpful. And again, assuming some of these have not been covered in the previous session. So we think it will be helpful. So in case it's helpful, let us know in the chat or in the Q&A section. Or if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us. So with that, let's start with a few highlights from a few sessions that have happened on Apex. So it's not just one session that happened on Apex. There are a couple of sessions, but we have put together the most interesting things that we felt would be beneficial. First and foremost, I want to talk about this new feature, which is secure Apex code with user mode data operations. It's quite a long name. It's currently in beta. So the forward-looking statement that we showed initially, it's applicable for almost everything that I'm going to talk about today. So the very first thing is about security. So up until now, those of you who know or don't know, there are multiple ways in which you can secure your Apex logic. So the first thing is using the with or without sharing keywords, which is going to either enforce or not enforce the sharing rules when you run a particular query. And then when it comes to field level security and object level security, there are different ways. Either you can use any of those schema methods like schema.account.field is accessible or is updatable. Or in the last release or in the last couple of releases, we've also launched the security.strip inaccessible or with security enforced clause in SOQL queries. So there's a lot that has happened over the past, but this is something new. And the reason we launched this is, first and foremost, Apex always runs in system mode. That means whatever query that you write, the FLS object level security is not automatically enforced. Though we've provided different ways, some of them have certain limitations. So this is kind of like a new thing that we have come up with, where you can decide whether to run a particular query in user mode or system mode. So the previous examples that I spoke about, where either you use security.strip inaccessible or the with security enforced clause, either it is enforced if you use that clause or it is not enforced if you don't use that clause. But here with this new user mode data operations, we are giving you two keywords. One is with user mode and the other one is with system mode. So depending on that, the query will either run in user mode or system mode. Now, what happens in user mode is that your FLS, that is field level security, your CRUD permissions, that is object level security, and sharing rules. So all these three are automatically applied onto your query whenever you use with user mode. Now, when you write a query with system mode, obviously object level security and field level security is not imposed. But when it comes to sharing rules, whether or not sharing rules are applied on that particular query depends on whether you have defined the class with or without sharing. So with user mode, everything is enforced. With system mode, sharing rules are enforced only if you use a class that is with sharing, kind of like the regular query. So using with system mode doesn't make a lot of difference. So with user mode does. And the same thing is applicable for DML operations as well. So when you're writing an insert statement, you can write instead of insert account or insert account list, you can write insert as user or insert as system. Again, insert as system is the same as not using it. So generally use insert as user and so sObject or sObject list. So this is something that's new. It's in beta, which means you can use it, but it's not generally available. So exercise caution. There might be a few bugs here and there. Now, the next new thing that I want to talk about, which is pretty exciting to me, because I have been a part of a lot of integration projects before, is this new DataWeave transformations in Apex, and it's currently in pilot. So here is a use case. So let's say you're integrating with an external system or whatever is your integration scenario. The data you get from the external system can be in different formats. So it can be in CSV, it can be in JSON, most likely it's in JSON, but there might also be a scenario where you need to import a CSV file, parse it, and then store records in Salesforce. So whatever is the scenario, you know, there are different data types that are available to you from an external system. Now, in order for you to process them, of course, there are certain Apex methods that allow you to convert certain formats into the other. Let's say if it is JSON, you'll do JSON.parse or JSON.serialize, whatever you want to do. Deserialize, actually. So when you do that, if everything goes good, you can convert your JSON into a list of whatever is your data type in which you're casting it. But not always is your data so straightforward. So in the case of JSON, you might have certain keys that are your Apex reserved keywords. So for example, one of the key might be date or date time, or it can be includes. So those reserved keywords, obviously, they cannot be converted, which is when you get errors and you'll have to convert that JSON into or do a string replace to replace all the reserved keywords into whatever you want. Now, in the case of CSV, again, there is Apex logic that you can write where you split by the new line, split by comma, get the index, and you make a mistake with one index and your entire logic breaks. Or if there are additional double quotes or special characters, your logic breaks. So in the end, you can technically do the conversion right now, but there's a lot of logic that you have to write, and there is a scope for errors. And sometimes you also might hit a heap size error. Let's say if the JSON file is large, like 4 MB, and you try to parse that, you put it in different variables, you might hit the heap size limit. So that is where this DataWeave is going to help you a lot. So I would definitely encourage you to go and check this out. So what is DataWeave? Is a data transformation language. And this data transformation language has been implemented by MuleSoft. So MuleSoft, as you know, is a tool that is dedicated for integrations. So DataWeave is a language that MuleSoft uses for data conversion between one data type and the other. Now, if I can show you, so this is the DataWeave playground that MuleSoft has on mulesoft.com. So what you have on the left is a CSV file, and in the middle is the DataWeave script. So when I say it's a data transformation language, that means you'll have to put in some script in order to tell what has to be transformed into what. So here we tell that the input is CSV, the output is JSON, and then you write a function that actually maps fields between the CSV and JSON. So here we are mapping the phone one field of the CSV into the home phone value of the JSON. So now when the script runs, as you can see on the right-hand side, you'll get an output JSON, and you can see based on the mapping, the field names are present here. Now, once you deserialize this, you can actually put this directly into the contact object. So instead of deserializing it into a wrapper, this can be deserialized directly into the contact object or whatever is the object in which you want to put the results in. So this is quite a powerful tool. Now we are giving you the ability to use this script inside Apex. And the best part is you need not have a MuleSoft license, which means whatever you're working on currently, you can just create this script inside Salesforce and then use it. And then there is no additional license whatsoever. As an Apex developer, you can start using MuleSoft DataWeave scripts without having any additional licenses. So that's what we were going for. So remember this script, and here is how you use it. So inside your SFDX project, as you can see, we have Force app and all of this, you know about it. You're supposed to create an SRC folder and a DW folder. DW stands for DataWeave. And inside that, you're going to put in the same DataWeave script. So this is the exact thing that you've seen online. So you do that. And because you're supposed to deploy this to Salesforce, there is supposed to be a meta XML file that is associated with it. And we are naming it DataWeave resource. So you can just create this new metadata for DataWeave scripts and then deploy this to Salesforce. Just like how you would deploy Apex classes and all of that, just deploy this new metadata type. And then you can use it. So here is a CSV file that you have seen online. I have uploaded it as a static resource. And then here is the Apex class that does the conversion. So first things first, I get the detail of the CSV from the static resource. Ideally, this is a demo, so I'm doing it from a static resource. Ideally, you would get it from a third-party endpoint. Now here is where the magic happens. So there's a new DataWeave standard class, a system class that you get, and you actually initialize a DataWeave script. And this is a syntax to do that. I can make this a little bit bigger. So whatever is the DataWeave script that you have deployed, the name of it, like CSV to JSON, for example, you create a script for it, and then you execute that script. So I'm in VS Code, so I can just click execute anonymous, and okay, there is some issue. I just ran it previously. Okay. All right, so it's better if I run it in the org. These things happen. I just tested it before coming into the session. It worked. But then now it doesn't.
Generally, it breaks in live real-time demos.
Yeah, it happens. So let me do it from execute anonymous. Ideally, yeah, you're not supposed to be using the developer console anymore. But yeah, unfortunately now we have to. So as you can see, the script has run, and what you can see here is the output. If I show only the debug, you can see the JSON output, which is the exact same thing that I've seen in MuleSoft, has come up here. So that means the script is working. Some issue with my VS Code perhaps. So basically, yeah, that's pretty much about it. Nothing much to dive deep into DataWeave anything anymore. So just create the script and use it, and you'll find it very helpful in all of your integrations. So I hope you find it as exciting as it is to me. If it is, please put it in the chat and let us know. Now, finally, we want to talk about best practices in Apex. And for that, what we recommend you look at is one of our sample apps. So we have a lot of code samples on the developer website. So you can just go to this URL or scan this QR code. This slide deck will be shared with you, so you can just go to the URL. So what Apex Recipes has is a collection of recipes or best practices or utilities with which it makes your job easier when working with Apex. Now, I'm not going to dive very deep into Apex Recipes because it was covered yesterday evening by one of our colleagues, again, a developer advocate, Mohit. He's done a session yesterday on best practices with Apex in 2022. And he's going to talk a lot about whatever I'm going to give you a quick recap. So I would recommend you check out this session to know more about Apex Recipes and how it can help you. But at a very high level, in that session, he covers about best practices in all of these categories, like security, performance, design for scale, reusability, and maintainability. And there are different recipes that cover each of these best practices. Now, if I take a look at the Apex Recipes app, so once you install the app, this is how it's going to look like. On the left, you can see there are recipes for multiple things. Now, you can actually copy paste all of this code and use it in your live projects. All of these are implemented using best practices, and they have test classes as well. So you need not worry about test coverage. Now, for example, if you go to collection recipes, so let's say you're creating a list or you're creating a map, you might think how this recipe can help you. So if you go into the recipes, what you can actually see are a few methods that we created for you, where let's say you have a use case where you have a list of accounts and you want to create a map out of it. You can use this method and it creates a map of ID, account. But what if you want to create a map of some other value? So let's say you have a list of accounts and you want to create a map of city name, list of accounts that are present in that city name. So then there is a method for that. So you just need to pass in the key, that is, let's say city, and then you pass in the list of sObject, and what it's going to return to you is a map of whatever is a string, list of sObject. So there are multiple methods that way that we've created for you, which makes the most commonly used tasks easier and more scalable. So let's say you have 10 developers, all the 10 developers might implement the same logic in different ways. In one place, it might break, in one place, it might not. So this way there is consistency. So tons of recipes, but I also want to call your attention to trigger recipes, because what we've created is a trigger handler. So it's kind of like a trigger framework, which allows all of your triggers to work consistently. And as you know, trigger handlers are always beneficial because not just enforcing a single structure, but we also have multiple features baked into it, like let's say loop count. There are scenarios where your trigger can sometimes run in a loop. So obviously you prevent that using static variables. But what if you want your trigger to run 2 times and then stop? So that way you have actually the ability to put a loop count map using this trigger handler. And then the one thing that I like about this is bypass. So let's say you have a complex operation or a data load job that is running, and then you need to bypass certain triggers for that particular set of operations. What you can do is you can actually set a list of triggers that have to be bypassed. and all of those triggers will be bypassed. So that is the advantage that this trigger handler gives you. So Mohit is going to talk a lot about this. I'm not going to spend more time on this, but just know that check out Apex recipes. A lot of developers have already found it really helpful, and let us know. We are there online, so you can let us know if you need new recipes or if you find a bug with one of our recipes. So with that, I'll hand it over to Satya to talk about everything new that's happened with LWC. Before that, I can see, I'll take 1 minute to answer a few questions. Pradeep has asked, what is the need to specify which system mode? If you omit the clause, it will be system mode anyways. That is what even I mentioned. So yeah, because the team has given user mode, they have given system mode, but you're right, you need not use it always. What is the difference between system mode and user mode? Like I mentioned, system mode doesn't enforce CRUD permissions or FLS permissions, whereas user mode enforces CRUD, FLS, and sharing rules. Is this new mode faster or is it easier compared to security enforce? We haven't technically baselined it yet, but this is a good point. We will baseline it and get back to you with those results. Okay, so Satya is ready. So I will try to type the answers while he is talking to you about LWC.
Thank you, Aditya, and hopefully everyone can see my screen. So I'm going to talk about the LWC updates and the sessions that happened there. Before that, I want to take a quick poll. Durgesh, if you can run poll for me, that'd be great.
Surely. Yes.
So I just want to know from you, like, what's your guess on how many components would have been published on Salesforce platforms so far? Is it 11 million, 22 million, 33 million, or 44 million? I can see a lot of people answering it, and most of them are answering it right. Okay, while you answer the question, I can also talk a little more about the sample apps that Aditya was talking about. Sample apps are all open source repositories which you can use, where you can find the reference code that you can use in your projects. So we have different sample applications created that will be useful for learning different things. Like, say, for LWC, we have a sample app called LWC Recipes. And similarly for Apex, we have the Apex recipes, which Aditya was referring to in its part of session. And then we also have some sample apps which showcase some reference applications like retail stores and all. So we encourage you to go back and check the sample app repositories on developer.salesforce.com website. So I think we have still 10 seconds, Durgesh.
Yeah, we'll just give like maybe around a few more seconds for them, but otherwise you can continue. I guess you already answered, right? So let me end the poll here. And yeah, we'll leave it to back to you. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you for answering the poll. And I can see most of you have answered it right. 42% of the people have answered it as 22 million. And I strongly believe that is the right answer. So I can reveal it in the next slide. Yes, 22 million is absolutely a right answer. And as I said, we have open source projects, which are like more than 2,000. You can refer to those applications. So as I said, sample apps are also part of the open source projects from where you can reference the code. And there are around 40,000 NPM downloads every week. With that said, let me get into what's new with Lightning Web Components. Again, there are a couple of sessions I believe are lined up where you'll be learning more about Lightning components and the developer tools and other stuff. So I'm going to bring some of the highlights, especially what happened during the TrailblazerDX events. We have actually curated all of these points from those sessions, and some of these things are now even available in summer 22 release, whether in beta or developer preview, or they are generally available. So one of such feature is a light DOM. So generally, when a Lightning Web Component is rendered, it is rendered in a shadow DOM, which is definitely useful because your component is encapsulated and it's more secure. At the same time, the third-party integrations are not that easy to do because they cannot access the elements of your component. One solution for that is light DOM, where when this component, if you executed it in light DOM mode, it is going to be attached to the host, outside host. It's not going to be rendered within the shadow DOM, but it's going to be rendered in the actual DOM. With that, the third-party integrations can access your Lightning Web Component, and it is easy to integrate other third-party applications. So to enable that, it's pretty simple. What you can do is you can define a static property called a render mode. A static property called a render mode, which you can initialize to light, in which case your render mode will be active. And then you can use your render mode in your template, in your HTML file. When you say LWC render mode equal to light, it is going to render in a light DOM mode. So when we render the component in light DOM mode, you can actually access all of your elements using the general APIs. JavaScript APIs. Let me show you an example here. So we have created a sample app. As I said, LWC recipes is part of our sample gallery, which is a collection of open source sample applications. So we have created a recipe here. The recipes are like short examples which are written in 30 or less lines of code. So one of the recipes here showcases the light DOM usage. Here you can see light DOM query is a parent component, and I have a child component called light DOM query child. I have a button in the parent component. When I click this button, the text is changed here. So I can do this using the public API, but in this case, I have not done that. I've used the query selector API, and I just access the element. That is possible because of light DOM. At the same time, when I change this text here, you can see this component text is changing from within the component. So now a parent component can directly access the elements in the child component. This paragraph element is accessed from there. Let's see it in the code. So here, second. Okay, so here I have a light DOM query dot JavaScript file. This is where, as I said, okay, let me show you the light DOM query.html. And here you can see in light DOM query.html, we have something called light DOM query child. And I just embed this component. Let me open the code of light DOM query child here. And light DOM query child.js, as I said, I've just used the render mode equal to light. And when we see the HTML file, here you can see there are some squiggles. Don't worry about it. My Salesforce CLI is, my Salesforce extensions is not yet updated. That's the reason you are seeing these red lines, but this code is perfectly good code. It works. So here you can see that I have made it the render mode as light, due to which I can, let me clean this. Okay, yes. So due to which I'm able to access this particular element right from my light DOM query parent. If you see the JavaScript file here you can see that I'm using the query selector method, and I'm accessing this paragraph element from the light DOM child and changing the text there. So this is one update that is now available in beta. And the other thing which is available is the notification modules, which I'm going to talk about a little later. First, let's quickly compare what's the fundamental difference between the shadow DOM and light DOM. So as I said, all the Lightning Web components are rendered in the shadow DOM. And when they're rendered in the shadow DOM, it's like a DOM by itself for the component itself. and everything is encapsulated within the DOM. So with that, you have a lot of security, and at the same time, you can easily port this component in any other applications. So it's easy to reuse the Lightning Web Component. But the drawbacks, as I said, the third-party integrations cannot access it. And for the if you use the light DOM, obviously, this is going to your element, your HTML component DOM is going to attach it to the host element that is external to your shadow DOM, in which case you'll be able to access the elements. But at the same time, it will be your responsibility to take care of the security, because your component elements are exposed and it's always susceptible to some breaking changes, due to which it may not be easily portable. With that, let's go to the next new thing in Lightning Web Components that was talked about during the TrailblazerDX event is notification modules. Most of you might be knowing that the cross-platform scripting APIs like Alert is going to be stopped by, support is going to be stopped by Chrome and Safari-like browsers. So as an alternative, what we can do is we have created something called as notification modules, which you can use as the modules in your component, and you can directly invoke the alert methods. So how do you do that? So these modules are available in the library. You can import that each of these modules. We have created module for alert, confirm, as well as prompt. So the code is pretty simple. You can import the module and call an open method on it. And you can make a asynchronous call. So that way you can you can run this script wherever the alert message is shown. You need not really worry about the cross tab references. Now here you can see the open method takes 3 parameters, that is the message, theme, and label. Theme is what is going to be the info, warning, or error, and you can show it as a whatever label you want to show here, and a message. Let's see it by running. So again, we have created this within our sample application. We go to miscellaneous, and here this is the module, and it looks like your general alert API that you use with your regular JavaScript. And here you can see the heading, and this is the message, and we have a OK button, which is going to return a promise once it is clicked. Similarly, we have implemented the confirm model. Here you can see it's a headerless confirm model, which takes a which shows a text and a OK button and cancel button. Again, it's going to return a promise. It's going to return true if we click the OK button, and it's going to return false if you click the cancel button. So this code as well is implemented here. And here you can see we are using the same open method with the similar kind of syntax, where we are giving message, variant, and label. And here we are processing the result. Once we have the result, once the promise returns, you can process the result, and whatever logic you want to write, you want to implement, you can implement it here. Similarly, we also have a code for the prompt. Again, you can go back to the sample app and check out the LWC recipes, and you can check these examples. The next thing I want to talk about is the mixed shadow mode. As I said, the Lightning Web Components are rendered in shadow DOM, and some of the browsers doesn't support shadow DOM. That's why we have created something called as polyfills, in which case we call it as synthetic DOM. So most of the all the components in the Lightning experience are generally rendered in the synthetic DOM. The reason is because some of the browsers doesn't support, we still render all the components in the synthetic DOM. For that reason, you'll not be able to leverage the complete capabilities and the performance of the native shadow DOM. But if you want to enforce your component to be rendered as a native shadow DOM, you can now do this. Again, this is in the developer preview at the moment. You can create a property called shadow support mode, which you can initialize to any, in which case this component will be rendered as a native shadow DOM. So again, you can have a native shadow DOM within the synthetic shadow DOM component, or a synthetic shadow DOM component within the native shadow DOM component. Again, if say your parent is a native shadow DOM, if you have enforced the shadow support mode, and in your child you don't want to enforce it, then you can use the shadow support mode again, same property, and this time you can use the value reset, in which case that will be rendered as a synthetic DOM. So these are the different new things that are available in the Lightning Web Components and Lightning. If you have missed this session, what's new with Lightning? So Almin and others have covered this very nicely. You can find what are the different new things. I just covered only a few of the things, but they covered a lot. If you have missed this session, I encourage you to go back and watch this session. The next session, which I like most during TrailblazerDX, is best practices with Lightning Web Components, where Alba Rivas and co-speakers shared some of the best practices with the Lightning Web Components. So when you compose the Lightning Web Components in Lightning App Builder, you can, not in Lightning App Builder, when you want to compose the Lightning Web Components, you can do it programmatically or declaratively. So you can use the Lightning App Builder to compose your components declaratively, while you can write the code in order to implement the composition programmatically. But when to use the declarative composition, when to use the programmatic composition. So here there are a couple of thumb rules, I would say. If your component has many dependencies with other components, in that case, it's always preferable to go to the programmatic composition. Why? Because at the top level, when the components communicate with each other, the performance is much lesser when it is implemented when it's implemented declaratively rather than programmatically. The other thing is, if there are too many communications between the components, let us say if you have two components, which are three components, which are communicating heavily during the transaction, I would say to compose all of these components, see the way to compose all of these components together into a single component. That would be a best practice. And as I said, wherever possible, use the composition, create the components programmatically, but sometimes there might be some use cases where you cannot really do it programmatically, but want to expose, for instance, if you want to use the components in different tabs and establish the communication between those components, then probably you'll have to do it programmatically. In that case, you can either use Lightning message service if you want to implement totally using the code. But again, if you want to give some flexibility to the admin so that he can compose the components dynamically during the in the Lightning App Builder. So what you can do is you can create the source component which can emit the event, and so in the publish subscribe model, you can create the source component which can emit the event, and the subscriber can be decided by the administrator dynamically within the Lightning App Builder. So what you can do is your component will be generating the event, and your administrator can decide which component can receive that event during the composing the components. That is possible using our dynamic interactions. And the third best practice I want to talk about is when you want to create flexible components. So you want to use slots or data attributes. So if you use slots, you can have a slot. Slot is like a placeholder within your Lightning Web component. When the consumer uses your component, he can dynamically send the data to the slot, so the slot will be rendered. So another component can be rendered within your slot dynamically while it is being rendered. So that is possible using the slots. That gives a lot of flexibility, but you cannot really assess what kind of data is going to be sent to your slot during runtime. So you have definitely some benefits where you have the flexibility there. But if you want to have the complete control, then you can better go for the data attributes, where you have a better encapsulation, where you can use the public API, the parent property, the parent component can set the property of the child component using the attributes. So the benefits of slots is it's easy to use. You can even use it in the other low-code flows, and anyone can, the consumer can it is very flexible for the consumer to send whatever content he wants. But if you use the data attributes, again, you have the complete control, but you should be very good at programming. You should have at least a little bit of programming skills. Again, wherever possible, favor this approach, favor the approach of slots over the data attributes. And again, the last best practice what I want to talk about is where to use the public attributes versus public methods. So if you are having a parent-child communication and you want to send the use the public API, you can do that. And then whether to define a property in the child or to define a method. So here you can see on the right side, these are the two possibilities. So in this case, I have a show spinner, which is a property, and I have made it as accessible to the parent using at API. So it's a it's a public property and it can be accessed. In the second scenario, I have a show spinner property, which I am accessing through a method. So in this case, what happens is if you want to access this property, this specific component has to be rendered. And then after the component is rendered from the DOM, you are going to query this property and you're going to change the property. So wherever possible, it's always a best practice to use the public property versus the public method. So these are the different best practices. And if you want to learn a lot more best practices, colleague Aditya is here. He has done a session with Apex Hours where he shared what are the best design patterns and best practices with Lightning Web Components. It's 1 hour, 20 minutes long session, but for sure, every bit of it is really useful. So we encourage you to go back and watch that session. The next updates I want to share about is the developer tools. One of the most awaited developer tool, Code Builder, will be available in beta soon. Probably in the next 15 days, you'll be able to access it. So now you can work on your projects. You can write the code either on Visual Studio Code if you want. If you want to work offline, probably you can use the Visual Studio Code. But if you don't want to install any of the software on your system, you directly want to work in the web browser, then Code Builder is the solution. Code Builder has the same user interface. Whatever you can access, whatever you can do with Visual Studio Code, all of these things, now you'll be able to do with the Code Builder. Let me show a quick demo of the Code Builder so that you will get a feel of how it is going to be. So Code Builder is going to be made available to you in the form of a installable managed package. And once you install the package, you can access the Code Builder from your app launcher. Here you can see Code Builder Beta. And then you can create the environment for you. You can create the project right from scratch. Or if you want, you can also create the projects from your existing GitHub repository. So in this case, to save some time, I've already created a project for myself from the repository, and we can launch the Code Builder environment using this launch button. So once you create the project, decide the project, whether you want to create it from scratch or GitHub repository, you can create the environment. It's all wizard driven and easy to do. And once the environment is created, you just click this launch button. It's going to launch the environment for you. So I already launched the environment here somewhere. Let me see if I can quickly reconnect. Okay, while it takes some time, I'll talk a little more about how this is going to be accessible, how you can use it, how long you can use it. Once it is launched, probably you'll have a 20 hours of working duration. You can work on the Code Builder, try it for like, say 30 days, up to 20 hours. And okay, let me quickly do this. Let us relaunch it because it's now being made ready for the beta. Probably there is some overload that's happening there. A lot of testing is going on. So while the Code Builder loads, let's see some of the other things, and then we will get back to the Code Builder and see how it works. So I also want to talk about a few of the things which are new in the developer tools. I don't know whether you have already tried it or not, but now you can rename the components, Lightning Web Components, from your file explorer within your Visual Studio Code. So you can select any of the components here. There is a image. So you can select any of the components. Now you'll be able to see a context menu item called rename component, which is going to rename your component. It is not going to touch the internals of the component. So any changes within the component ought to be made by yourself, but you can change the name of your component using this simple shortcut. And the other new thing in the developer tools is now you can create the manifest file. You need not really remember the syntax of the manifest files and start writing the manifest files, but you can create the manifest files right from your file explorer. So here you can see that there is again a context menu. You can select whatever files you want to include in your manifest file and right click and simply say generate manifest file. It is going to create a manifest file for you. With that, let us see the code builder is loaded. Yes, the code builder is loaded here. And if you see, this environment looks pretty much similar to what you see in your Visual Studio Code. And you can see here that I have loaded it from the browser. On the left side, you have the activity bar. You have like file explorer, and you can also see there is an org browser. So if you click org browser, it's going to get all the metadata from your org, and you can download the metadata from any of these different elements, different categories. Maybe you want to download Apex classes, all of them together, you can do that into your project. When I click this, it's going to get all of those things into my project here. And you can also find a help if you want to get started with code builder, where to start and all. There is a really good interactive help that is created here. And you can check, you can just take a tour of what are the different things that you can do, how you can connect your org to the code builder, how to find the metadata, how to find your files, so on and so forth. These are the different 6 steps with which you can get started with the code builder. So I've already got some of the projects from my org browser into my project. I have some files. Let me show one of the usages here. Again, as I said, it is having the same kind of user interface like your Visual Studio Code. You can use the same set of shortcuts. For instance, I can use Command-Shift-P to launch the palette, and I can also launch the terminal here, and the terminal looks pretty similar. It is the same terminal. You can run the same set of commands here, same set of sObjects commands here, and you can also open the org. Now let us launch the command palette, and let me show one of the use cases here. Say one of the things which is also available in Visual Studio Code, my favorite tool is Socle Builder. So you can create a Socle query using Socle Builder. You can launch it. You can just go here and say search for Socle, and exactly you can find the tool here, and you can click this tool, create a query in Socle Builder. It's going to launch this tool. Now let's see how we can dynamically create a query in Code Builder. Here, let me select one of the projects. So what I want to do is I already connected one of the orgs here. The again, eBikes, as I said, is a sample app which showcases the retail store. And here I have a lot of products. So I want to get all of these products. I want to write a Socle query to retrieve all of these products. So I can go to my Socle query builder, search for the product object, and you can find the fields. Let us say I want to have name, and here you can see it's dynamically building the Socle query for us. Okay. So I want to say name, I want to say status, and I want to also see the price. Okay, and I can simply run the query. It is going to get all the values here. It's going to get all the records here. And you can see it got name, status, and MSRP. You can also export it to CSV or .json file. Not only that, you can also add the filters here. So you can say where status is equal to available. I can say status equals available. And you can run the query. It's going to show only the statuses that are available. You can also run order by and much more. So this is all about the Socle Builder. Not just Socle Builder, you can write your LWC code, you can write your Apex code, whatever you want to, whatever you do in your Visual Studio Code, you can do all of these things in Code Builder. Okay. The next thing I want to talk about is two more commands. Again, I in fact wanted to run a poll here, but this type of question is not suitable for poll. But my question, you can answer somewhere in your chat. So what is the fundamental difference between push and deploy? Okay, so push, we have two commands like push and pull. The other one, deploy and retrieve. We use it for two different purposes. So you can just put it in chat, but I'll not waste much time. I'll answer it directly. So most of the answers that I got, at least from the people when I asked this question, is push and pull is used with the source tracked orgs like scratch orgs or sandboxes, while deploy and retrieve is used with the non-source tracked orgs like production orgs. But one good news is, which is going to come soon, that's what I heard in the TrailblazerDX event, is that we are going to support deploy and retrieve in these scratch orgs as well. So what happens is, when we use deploy and retrieve, we can specifically deploy a file. So whatever file you want to deploy, you can deploy it. But if you use push, it's going to see the differences. It's going to use the source track. It will see all the differences, and it's going to push all the files at once into your org. So now you can use deploy and retrieve also with the source tracked orgs like sandboxes or your scratch orgs. And not only that, you're also going to get org browser. So now we are currently able to access the metadata from the production org, and org browser is visible in your activity bar only when we connect to your production org. But it's also going to be supported in the scratch org as we go forward. The last update I want to share in developer tools is DevOps Center. DevOps Center is now available in open beta. You can try your hand. You can start using the DevOps Center. But what is DevOps Center in first place? DevOps Center is a tool with which you can manage your releases and changes without using the change sets. So how we are going to do? You can not only that, you can also you can also push your source code into your version control system. This can be done by the developer admins. We need not really push developer admins to learn CLI in order to work with the version control systems. With DevOps Center, the admins or those who don't know coding can also start working with the version control system. They can make changes in the org, and they can push the changes into the version control system. Let's see how. Again, you can install the DevOps Center. Okay, you can install the DevOps Center as a managed package, and few permission sets you'll have to set. But again, there's a very good documentation. There's also a community group for the DevOps Center. I think there are more than 3,800 subscribers in that group who in fact subscribed even much before this DevOps Center was released in the last 2 years. So as I said, you can launch the DevOps Center once it is installed as a managed package from your app launcher. So I already launched the DevOps Center here. And this is the user interface for the DevOps Center. You can create a project, whichever project you want to work on. I just created one of the projects. I said it a simple demo. So if I open the project, so this project has something called as work items, pipeline, and settings. To get started, you can plan what should be your deployment flow. Maybe you have a set of developer systems, set of developers working on the different developer environments. Then once they develop, they can push the changes into a kind of integration environment. From there, they want to push all those, bundle all those changes, and then deploy it in a user access UAT machine. And from there, you maybe want to deploy it in production, or you may want to deploy it in staging and then production. Whatever pipeline you want to create, you can do that using the DevOps Center. Yeah, so how do you do that? You can go to the settings, and here you can create a different kind of environments. Here you can see that I have created a production environment, a demo staging environment, and a demo environment. So I've connected 3 different orgs for these 3 different environments. So once you create those environments, you can plan whatever way you want pipeline needs to be, and you can create a pipeline. Here you can see that I've created a pipeline where I want to first make some development, and then once the development is done, I want to move to the staging environment, then to the release environment. This is how I want to use it. So to do that, we got a new object called work item. Again, this object can be used, can also be accessed from your flows and other stuff because it's a Salesforce object. So here you can create a new work item. Let us say I want to create a new work item. I can create, let me say, create book object. Book object. This is the work item I want to create. And whatever instructions I want to give the description, I can give the description here. Create a book object and fields, whatever it is. And you can assign this task to your users of the DevOps. So you can have any user, you can have basic users, you can also have admin users, you can deploy the changes. So let me assign it to myself and let us save. Once you save the work item will be available here, and you can click this. And then you can start working on the changes. You can say that whether you want to work on these changes right from here, or you want to work on the changes from somewhere outside using your Visual Studio Code thing, and then do that. It's up to you. You can choose that. So let me say I want to work from here, and let's say demo dev and proceed. So what it does is it is going to show me the environment which I want to use. So demo dev is the default development environment where I can start working on this specific requirement. And you can see there are some other requirements, some other files which are already existing, which you may want to commit. You can do that. These are the changes that you can pull from your DevOps. Let us see. Let us create that in our DevOps. I can launch it right from here. Let us very quickly create a object. So here I'm in the DevOps, and I'm in the, let's go to the object manager. And let us say create custom object. I'll create a book object. Let us say books. And let's keep all of these things default. Let's really not worry about those things. And let us save it. Okay, once it is saved, we can go back to our awesome. We can go back to our DevOps center, and then in the DevOps center, we can pull the changes. Let's pull the changes. And you can see that your book object is now available. You can choose whichever you want to, want to migrate, you want to push it to your version control system. You can select all of those things from here, and you can give a comment. You can say created a book object, and then you can commit the changes. So here you can see that I have not went to my GitHub or anywhere to see how my commit is happening, but you can see it is making some commits. What it does is when you create the project, it's going to create a project in your GitHub account. The only thing that you need to have is a GitHub account. Once you have that, because currently only Git is supported here by the DevOps Center, and it is pushed there. And you can also see the GitHub repository. Here it has created a branch and called with the work item number, and it has pushed the changes. So again, once the changes are pushed, you can say create review. When you click create review, it is going to generate a PR for you. So let me go and refresh this page, and you can see that it has created a pull request here. Okay, and the next thing you can do is once review is done, you can say it is ready to be promoted. And then you can see that you cannot make any more changes because you already committed your changes, and it is ready to promote. It is ready to deploy. You can go to the pipeline here, and from the pipeline, you can push these changes. You can you can see it in this current environment. This is the environment which is the approved work item currently. You can see it in the environment. You can also see the change request, the pull request right from here, or you can just select it and promote selected. And you can see that whatever changes you want to promote, maybe you want to promote all the metadata, or you want to promote only the changes which are different from the your demo staging org. Only those changes if you want to promote, you can select that here and then simply say promote. And now you can see that it's going to be promoted, and this should be accessible in a different org, and you should be able to see that deployed in that org. You can directly open the org and see the changes once the pushing is done. So similarly, so you can also see that like, no, I have two work items here. I'm working on two different pull requests. I can just, you can also see in this GitHub repository. So you have the two pull requests currently. One of the pull requests is like promoted, and it has created one merge pull request for both of these things. So now you can promote all of these things together as a bundle. You can create a bundle of your changes, and you can promote these changes into your release org. And you can also go, you can access any of these orgs and give a version number. Let me say I want to give a 0.1.1 as the version number, and I'll promote it to my production org. That's it. So it is promoted. You can also go to any of those environments and see how it looks. So you can just click this, you can say open environment. And now I'm like, no, in the production environment. I'm just logging into the production environment. Earlier I was in a scratch org. Now I'm logging into the production environment. And if I go into the object manager, okay, my session has expired because I logged in yesterday. So if I go to the object manager, here now you should be able to see your book object. You saw that like, no, it is seamless. So we are working with the version control system even without knowing anything about the version control system. And if you go back here in the version control system and refresh this page, you can see all the pull requests have been merged into your repository. So that's a lot. I took a little bit of time, but I believe I was able to deliver the demo. With that, I want to hand it over to Aditya without delay so that he can talk a lot, or at least something about API.
Okay. So, okay, let me share my screen. Okay, so I am back. I hope you are able to see me. Yeah. Okay. So we are going to talk about what's new with APIs. Again, I mentioned in the beginning that I'm a big fan of integrations. So a lot of stuff about integration coming up. So these are the 4 topics that we're going to cover today. First is OpenAPI 3.0 for sObjects, then GraphQL API, PubSub API, and calling external services from Apex. So first things first, OpenAPI 3.0 for sObjects. So before getting into that, what does OpenAPI mean? So let's say you've built an API. It contains a bunch of endpoints, and each endpoint needs a particular type of request. It needs certain parameters. And the response that that API gives also has certain parameters. It has a structure. So now how do you document that structure so that other systems can understand it? So that is where OpenAPI comes into picture, where OpenAPI is a documentation of a particular API. Now, there have been multiple specifications, OpenAPI 1.0, 2.0, 3.0, the latest one being 3.0, obviously. So now within Salesforce, we have now given you the ability to create an OpenAPI 3.0 specification for sObjects. So these are the 4 endpoints. So, you know, there are REST APIs that Salesforce exposes, and there are like 200, 300 REST APIs, out of which we have chosen these APIs. That is sObjects API that shows you a list of objects that are there. sObject/sObject, which is going to describe a particular object. Then sObject/ID, which is going to get the details of a particular record. So there are a few endpoints that we have considered, and we are giving you the ability to generate an OpenAPI specification for that. Now, what is the use of this OpenAPI specification? So when it comes to OpenAPI, the way typically it is used is if you see the 3 steps at the bottom. First thing is you have to generate an API specification, or if an API specification is already available for an API, you use it. Now, the advantage you get with an API specification is there are tools available that let you automatically generate code stubs for that particular API. So let's say you want to call one of these APIs, let's say sObjects/sObject/ID. Now, if you were supposed to call this in a custom way, you would have to create a client. Let us create some bunch of logic, call this API, go back to the documentation to figure out what kinds of parameters it accepts. Then once you get the result back, you have to parse that response. So there is a bunch of code that you manually write for a given API. And any number of times that you use this API, you'll have to copy paste the same code. So instead of you having to write all of that code by hand, there are tools out there that can generate that particular code based on API specification. And then you can use that code stub directly in your app. So now, how do you do that for Salesforce is you go to Postman. So here inside Postman, there are a lot of things on my screen. Okay. Yeah. So inside Postman, what you do is you'll have to make a request to this endpoint. So this is a new endpoint that we have exposed that lets you generate an OAS3 specification. So once you hit this endpoint, you're going to get a URL. What this URL contains is an ID of the request that you made to generate the specification. So this is just a request to generate a specification. Once you make this request, the specification gets generated in the background. And then using this ID, you'll have to make one more call. So basically it's the same endpoint. You just append this ID to the end of the endpoint, and then you'll retrieve the OpenAPI specification, which is in JSON format. Now, for performance reasons, we generate this specification once every 6 hours. So if you need a new specification, let's say you added a new field, you need a new specification, you need to wait for 6 more hours. So that's the current limitation. It's in beta right now, as I mentioned. So beta products are not GA. So things might change when it goes to GA, but currently that is the limitation. Now in this specification, you can see that there are different paths, and each path corresponds to a particular API endpoint. So the beauty of this specification that is generated is it also contains your org's customizations. So this is the same JSON file that I have over here. Now inside this, you can see it's a huge file, around 5 lakh lines of code, because there are so many objects, there are so many endpoints for each object. So here there is a custom object for order. And you can see order __ C sObject is an endpoint. So whatever is there in my org, this specification contains that. Now, like I mentioned, for each object, it's not just one endpoint. For each object, there are 4 or 5 endpoints, because you need to get, delete, put, and all of those operations are also available. And inside the specification, you can see all the fields that are present in my org for that particular object, let's say custom field, standard fields. So my specification contains all of these properties. Now, how can I use this? Now, imagine this particular app. Okay. So what we are dealing with here is another sample app, which you'll find in code samples and SDKs on our developer website, which is called e-bikes, which is basically a sample app that lets you show a bunch of electric bikes, create orders, all of that. So in here, there is an order, and I can add any number of items to the order. It's all a sample app. I'm not going to go dive deep into it. But the important thing here is the status. So the order is right now in production. Now, what I want to do is I want to create a public facing website where if I give the order ID, I need to get the order status. Now, in order to do this, like I mentioned, I need to write a bunch of code. I need to call the API and all of that. And instead of having to do having to write code manually, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the terminal And this is the JSON specification that I downloaded from Postman. Now, OpenAPI Generator CLI is a tool that you can download. It's publicly available for free. And this is not just for Salesforce, by the way, it is already there for any projects that you want to use. Now, what I can do is, based on this JSON specification, what I say is generate some JavaScript code for me. And what happens when I run this, it takes about 30 seconds or so, and it generates this project. So whatever you are seeing here on the left-hand side, all of this is automatically generated using that command line tool and the OpenAPI specification. And in the distribution folder, you can see some JavaScript files that actually have all the code that you need to make callouts to each of those endpoints. And the project is also going to have a README file that documents how you can use this particular project. So as you can see, all you need to do is copy this code stub. So this code stub is also given to you in the README file. Basically, it's going to require Lightning Platform REST API, which means whatever is in the distribution folder, you're going to import it into your project, and you're going to write this bunch of code. Again, nothing written by hand, everything you can copy paste. Now, here is my project, that is LWR app demo, which is actually running. If you can see here, it's running on localhost 3000, which is what I have shown you here. And if you can see here, I have an endpoint to get the order details. And what I'm doing, I'm actually using the same lines of code that I have copy pasted from the README file. So Lightning Platform API, .API client, .instance, whatever, all of it is boilerplate. You need not by heart anything. You can copy paste from the README file. And here, there are methods that are created for each of the endpoint. So for example, as you've seen, /sObjects /order__c. So here is a method that auto created based on that specification. All I need to do is pass the order ID and I get the response back. So now, if I go here, enter the order ID, which is not this, and get status, you can see it shows me the status from the API. If you are worried that I have hard-coded that data, let me fire it again. And you can see this is the response that is coming to me from Salesforce. It includes all the fields that are specified on that custom object as a part of the API specification. It contains the name, created date, and if you scroll all the way here, it also contains the status. Now, this is a response that I get without me having to write anything. So I generated the OpenAPI specification, generated the code stubs, copy pasted that right here, and your integration is live and ready. And this code stubs can be generated in any language, Ruby, Python, depending on what tool you're using, you can do that. So that is the power of OpenAPI specification for sObjects. So I like it a lot. I like everything that I'm going to show you. Next is the GraphQL API. Now, here is another API which makes it easy for you to get data. Now, let's assume you're building a mobile application or you're building a website that requires a lot of data from the database. Now, GraphQL initially was used by Facebook. So as you know, once you go onto a Facebook feed, you see a lot of things. Now, how is Facebook able to keep their website performant? So every time you are trying to find comments, you're trying to like, share, or you're trying to view a video, Facebook is not making API calls for each and everything. They are making one API call to get all the information that they need, which is why it is so performant. And the secret behind that is GraphQL. So GraphQL is kind of like this query language for APIs that let you specify what data that you want out of a particular system. Now, that ability we have now given to you inside Salesforce. So the GraphQL language, it actually has some backend logic that we implemented. So if you look at the screenshot, you can see you fire a request with certain parameters and you get a response. I'm going to show you a demo. But all you need to know is there is one endpoint with which you can get all the data. Now, you might ask me, how is it different from the traditional REST API endpoints? So for example, you have an endpoint to get account information. You have an endpoint to get contact information. So that is where is the fundamental problem. There are multiple endpoints to get details of multiple objects. And the second one, Now, let's say in the previous example, you have seen when I requested for the order status, along with the order status, I got the created date, I got the order name, and I got a bunch of other fields, which I technically don't need. So because of all that additional information that is included in my response, the response size increases, and people who are using mobile data, let's say, to download a 1 MB JSON file, it takes a lot of time. To download a 10 KB JSON file, it takes lesser time. So the lesser fields that you get from the server, the faster your app is going to be. So GraphQL solves that problem also. So you can exactly specify what records that you need and what fields in that records that you can need, all within one single request. So again, for that, in Postman, if you look at the Postman collection that we have, so the Salesforce Platform APIs is a Postman collection that is generally available for all of you to use and experiment with all the Salesforce APIs. So in that, you'll notice there is a new GraphQL beta folder in which you have different endpoints. So in that endpoint, what you can see is there is a single URL called /services/data/GraphQL. So inside that GraphQL, there is a particular syntax using which you send a request. So here, what I'm requesting for is query for accounts. And this is the name of the graph. So I'm asking them to query and the account object. And inside the account object, return the ID and name fields. So this is a structure of my graph request. Now, once I click send, it's going to send the request, of course, and it's going to come back to me with a response, which includes the same information that I have requested. Now, for some reason, when I'm demoing, it is very slow. I don't know why, but the response will eventually come back. But the important thing is the ability for you to configure what fields that you want. Now, in order to do this, you need not just use Postman, but there is a publicly available tool called GraphQL Online, and you can use that. So GraphQL Online, like I said, GraphQL is not something that Salesforce invented. It's already there for quite some time. So you need to just specify the endpoint, again, like I did in Postman. And the advantage that this online API Explorer for GraphQL gives me is I can, instead of having to write my request by hand, I can auto-generate it. So for example, it is going to show me all the list of available objects in my Salesforce arc. So GraphQL needs a specification to be pre-written. We have done that, which is why you're getting this. So basically you expand, you say, I want accounts. You just expand it and say, what do you want in accounts? So under edges and node, you have all the account fields. So that way you can decide what data you want. In case you're asking about child queries, what I've done here is I have gone ahead and I have my custom order object over here. So in order object, I selected, I need the ID of the order. And then I have order items __ R, which is the child objects of that particular order. So that way I'm going to specify what all details that I need. And if you look at the response that I get, it's going to be in the same structure in which I have sent the request. So UI API query order __ C, edges, and inside the node I'm going to have, this is the first order. And inside the order, there are 2 line items. That is what I have received. So you as a developer have a lot of control on what data you need to get. And yes, there are multiple other options that you have. For example, you can also write filters. So let's say you only want to get accounts where the name starts with S. You can do that. So all of this is technically possible. Oh yeah, actually the response is here, my bad. So you can see where the name like S, you can see it is the same response structure. There is only one account that is returned which starts with S. So that is the power of GraphQL. And it currently supports UI API exposed sObjects, which means all the standard sObjects. It doesn't expose Apex class and all of that metadata sObjects for now. But for data, I think this is good enough. Moving on to the third interesting API that we launched is the PubSub API. So currently, whenever you want to implement a dynamic application which responds to all these streaming events like your platform events, push topics, and all of that, you'll have to use a bunch of these different APIs. So to publish platform events, you'll either use a SOAP API, REST API, bulk API. And to capture events, you're going to use a streaming API. And to get the schema, you're going to use the REST API. So a bunch of different APIs to perform the same task, that is publish and subscribe. So what we have done now is we've created one generic API called the PubSub API. And using the PubSub API, you can actually publish, subscribe, and get the schema for any streaming event. Let it be platform events, let it be push topics, or let it be change data capture events. All of these can be subscribed to using the PubSub API. And the only thing that you can fire manually is, of course, the platform event. So that can also be done using the PubSub API. Now, the PubSub API is not just a new API, but architecturally also it is very different because we are using the new gRPC framework. So you go back after this session and read about gRPC. It's a whole new topic. It's actually based on HTTP2. It is used for bidirectional communication. There are a ton of advantages that gRPC has over traditional HTTP. So we have used that. And just like what you have seen with the OpenAPI, now a gRPC specification has to be written. And then you can generate code stubs for 11 languages. And JavaScript is one of those languages. So you can use it in Node.js or wherever that you want. Now, the other advantages that you get is subscription flow control and publish acknowledgements, which actually it is better if I show you in a demo. So for
Aditya, just to
Yeah.
interrupt, like we are already, overshooted by a few minutes. So maybe if you can quickly wrap up this video and then we'll quickly cover the remaining slides.
Yeah, I'll be done in about 5 minutes. So let me quickly run this. Okay, so the whole concept here is that I have an org. Again, it's the same order manufacturing use case. But this time, what I have is like a manufacturing scenario. So the moment I push an order to submit it for manufacturing, the external system receives that order. And once I approve or reject the order from the external system that is running on localhost, the status automatically changes back in Salesforce. So that's the kind of use case that I tried to demonstrate. Now, what happens in the backend is this. So we are using the new PubSub API. And like I said, the code stubs are automatically generated for you based on the specification. I'm not going to go into the detail of that. But all you need to do is you need to register a new PubSub service, and it takes in certain parameters. And then you call the subscribe method on what topic that you want. It can be a CDC topic, it can be a platform topic, whatever that is. And then this is an important parameter. So I said subscription flow control, right? So here you can specify the number of events that you want to receive. So this is most useful in terms of bulk use cases. So let's say your application is unable to handle 100 requests at once. You can actually specify 10 and tell that only receive 10 requests. After that, you can make another subscribe request for the remaining ones. So that way, how many events that you want to handle is in your control. So you're not overwhelmed by all the events that Salesforce sends at once. Similarly, you have methods to publish. Of course, you'll again specify what is a topic to publish, the schema and event data. Now, the syntax should be very familiar to you if you've used Lightning Message Service. So how you use Lightning Message Service, you specify a message channel and then you send the data. It's exactly the same. Now, all of this code is available online on GitHub, so you can check it out. Now, moving on to the final one, I don't think this needs much of a demo as well, but you can now call external services from Apex. So most of you know about external services where you can integrate with an external system using the OpenAPI schema, using point and click. So that is where you use external services. And it creates a bunch of actions that you can right now use in flows. But this particular one is generally available, and the PubSub API is also generally available. So now with external services from Apex in GA, what you can do is you can actually call this bank service and the actions within that bank service directly from your Apex class. So you need not again write a custom integration to those endpoints using Apex. Whatever is the external services you created, you can leverage the same. This also works because it is GA. So you can feel free to go ahead and try it out. I think there is a blog post which contains this sample code. So you can copy paste that and work with it. So with that, I think we are at the end of the session. We will look at some Q&A, and if there is time, we will answer it. And in the meanwhile, Durgesh will do the housekeeping stuff.
Yeah, thank you everyone for joining in. I know we are already overshooted by 10 minutes, 7 minutes approximately so far, but I'm looking forward to see you in the coming session. We have one great session lined up for evening today, and there is going to be much more detail about the Salesforce DX and all the new things that are happening around it, including DevOps Center and many more things. So don't miss it. You will be able to join this session tomorrow at 10 a.m. And I'm looking forward to see many of you in there. On the next slide, I have a few more points for all of you, especially let us know how we are doing. Maybe Aditya, if you can move on the next slide. Yeah, please share with everyone that you are participating in this great program. Here is a great link of it. You can also download this image and can post on social media. You can just pull out your phone, scan this code, and you'll be able to download this image too. There are multiple channels. I also have a slide deck, sorry, a feedback page for all of you from where you can download the slide deck. Let us know how we are doing. I have one specific question which I've added in there, and where I need your feedback to know that, how we as a partner enablement team can do differently to make this whole, Trailblazer DX experience of yours, more, engaging. So please do let us know. Please provide your feedback. This will really help us to, make our coming engagements, our coming programs, more engaging with all of you. So I'm looking forward to hear back from you on that. Okay, so let us know how we did that. And with this, let's see what all questions we still have on our panel. So there are a few questions around. So there's definitely this one question, I guess. Let me ask this first. This was from Manisha Satya. Like, you explained about that. The new way to send notification. Is it a way to change the label of the buttons on that particular alert, a new alert mechanism?
Yeah, it's basically an
Notification.
alternative to the alert that you use with the general JavaScript, where you can, as I said, like in the open method, you can send whichever title you want to use, or whichever text message you want to use. You can all do it dynamically from within the code.
And can we also change the labels of the custom buttons for the confirmations?
No.
Okay.
Again, I need to check, but I did not at least try that. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. How GraphQL improves comparing to the Composite API? Maybe Aditya, if you want to
Yeah,
answer
so
that.
Composite API, fundamentally what you do with Composite API is you fire multiple REST requests using the same endpoint. So for example, it allows you to fire an endpoint, let's say get the account details, get the contact details. The same thing, multiple REST requests bundled together is Composite API. But GraphQL allows you additional selectivity of fields as well. So in the end with Composite API, what you're doing is you're making a call out to a traditional REST endpoint. So if you're getting the account details, you're going to get all the fields. If you're getting the contact details, you're getting all the fields.
Okay.
But with GraphQL, you get additional selectivity where you can specify for an account, you only return me this information. For a contact, return me this information. So selectivity of fields is present in GraphQL, but it is not there in the Composite API. So that's where it fundamentally differs.
Okay. And you spoke about DataWeave. Any visibility on, when it would gonna be generally available?
As you know, we can't comment on that. So we just have to wait and watch.
Okay. Great. I guess I will probably take a couple of more questions only. Are you seeing anything interesting, Satya, which or Aditya, which we should highlight?
So I see a lot of questions around DevOps Center, Durgesh. I think there is a session tomorrow where the product
Yes.
manager herself is going to deliver the
Yes.
session.
Yeah. So,
Definitely, I think if you are not able to answer your questions right here, don't really worry about it. You can ask your questions tomorrow as well, and you can get all of them answered. So, for instance, one of the questions I want to answer is like, how the GitHub is connected with DevOps Center. It all happens in the setup step. So again, there's a very nice user guide and setup instructions already in your help document. So in that you are going to do this connection for the very first time. Once it is done, it's all done. So the rest of all happens automatically.
yeah, and you don't need to re-register for that session again. You'll be getting an invitation from Zoom directly in your mailboxes 1 hour earlier to the session. But I just shared the timings, right? Like the scalability product would be happening at 5 p.m. today, IST. And again, the another one, which is Salesforce DX, is going to be happening at 10 a.m. in morning tomorrow, IST time again. And I'm looking forward to see all of you in there. So once again, thank you for joining in. And I'm looking forward to see you in the coming sessions. And do let us know how we did today, and especially that additional question which I have for you. Let us try to make the partner enablement and engagement more better for you with the coming Trailblazer DX. And I'm looking forward to get your feedback on this. Once again, thank you, Aditya and Satya, for doing such a deep dive session, and also bringing in a lot of demos and flavors of actual hands-on during the session. So that was really helpful. And yeah, we are looking forward to invite you more into the coming programs too. Okay, thank you all of you. Thank you
All
for
right.
joining in.
Thank you.